my name is Patrick Samuels, and it is my privilege to use this marvelous communicative device to comment on what has become of the country that my friends George Washington and James Madison and Alexander Hamilton and many others created in the late 18th century. I regret to inform you, however, that as I look around today, over 200 years later, there are a number of things that trouble me not a little. There is much talk these days, and such talk has been prevalent for some time now, concerning how Washington doesn't work. People believe that Washington, in which they mean either their national politicians or their political establishment, is out of touch, to use the vernacular, with their everyday lives. The people in Washington don't really care about anything but their own power. That the head of our republic has become a bloated and inefficient and in many ways operates contrary to the health and well-being of our nation and her citizens. It is a belief, unfortunately, that is amply supported by our experience. There's a very simple explanation for this, however. The government our founders designed with the Constitution was very limited in its powers and scope, and once we allowed our government to move beyond the constraints put on it by the Constitution, it became like a rudderless ship, tossed about by the whims of circumstance and opinion, a multitude of selfish captains trying first one correction and then another, simply compounding their errors, long ago having severed their anchor line in the mistaken belief that such an action would improve their lot. Simply put, the federal government under our Constitution was not designed to handle the great variety of roles it has now appropriated for itself. Our founders did not envision a time when the federal government would take on the role of primary insurer, social engineer, retirement funds manager, or become expert in medicine, the environment, or finances, to name just a few. By attempting to legislate or regulate in such a way that one solution applies to everyone equally in a country as vast as ours simply creates more problems than it solves. Look at it this way. A lawmaker is elected to Congress. Now, he's probably a lawyer, not a physician or a scientist or a banker, yet he's called upon to make laws in all these areas, and many more, laws that will affect millions, and if formulated or implemented incorrectly, could have disastrous consequences. So what is he or she to do in such a circumstance? Well, he delegates the draft of the bill to staffers or lobbyists, and they all have their own competing interests. The bill suddenly grows, incomprehensible in detail and scope, and emerges in a form that can only be understood by lawyers and experts in the field. And once signed into law, it is turned over to some government agency where bureaucrats with their own ideas concerning the implementation of the policy apply it to all of us. And these unelected bureaucrats also begin the process of making up new rules and regulations with the same force of law behind them. As we all know, there are many places where this process can go awry and have negative consequences for us, be they intentional or unintentional. The mortgage crisis, the state of health insurance, our energy problems are all the result of misguided attempts to meddle in areas where the federal government simply does not belong. Once these new problems reveal themselves, however, new laws and regulations are added to the original. The adoption of these new laws and regulations is accompanied by much lobbying from both sides of the issue because even bad government policy has its beneficiaries. Multiply this by thousands of occurrences, and we begin to understand why lobbyists and bureaucrats wield so much more power than we do in Washington. It is an exclusive symbiotic relationship that excludes most of us. There is little point in having a constitution if we ignore it or choose the parts we like or interpret it to mean whatever we want to at the time. A living, changing constitution may as well be dead because it is no longer relevant to the process by which we order our lives. My friend Jefferson, he had a lot to say on the subject. He said, "Our particular security is in possession of a written constitution. Let us not make it a blank paper by construction." Unfortunately, that is exactly what has been done. He also said, "In matters of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." It is the nature of those in power to seek more. It is in the nature of government to grow. In a democracy, it is the people who want their government to do more for them, to trade their freedom for security and benefit. But a free people is a strong people, and the Constitution was designed to keep the majority from seeking to expand the government power for their own satisfaction. The Constitution is the firm voice of the parent who tells the child in the candy shop, no, knowing that while the child may get some instant gratification, over the long term, such a diet of food is unhealthy. How do we fix this? Well, the solution is at one time the simplest, but also the most severe. Simple because all we need to do is devolve power from Washington. If Washington is no longer involved in health care or retirement or social planning and the like, what will the lobbyists have to do? They'll disappear. The special interests will find some other interest. The bureaucracies will evaporate. And with such a reduced influence, perhaps, just perhaps, those who are elected to our national offices will learn what public service and statesmanship are about all again. But it is also the most difficult, because we, the people, must all say no to the largesse that we have been receiving. Like the drunk at the bar, we must harden our resolves to put up our hand and say no more. We must once again take responsibility for our own lives and stop expecting Mother Washington to meet all our needs, cure all our ills, and save us from our own stupidity and foolishness. Once we have done that, then we must send people to Washington that will dismantle the beast and return to us our liberty. Now, I know such a thing may be doubtful. We may have formulated too strong a habit, but we cannot afford to go on like this forever, either morally or financially. The gravy train will come to an end sooner or later. The question is, will it be on our terms or not? Thank you for listening, and God bless America.